Brazil is disappearing, not all at once, not with an explosion, but centimeter by centimeter, meter by meter, in a silent process that no newspaper is covering the way it should. The Atlantic Ocean is advancing over the Brazilian coast in a way that few scientists expected to see happen so fast. And the scariest part of all this is that you have probably visited or vacationed in a place that may simply cease to exist. If you want to understand what is really happening to Brazilian territory before it is too late, subscribe to the channel right now and hit the bell, because this kind of content you will not find anywhere else. Let us start from the beginning. Brazil has more than 5,000 miles of coastline. It is one of the longest coastlines in the world. Beaches, cliffs, mangroves, sand dunes. All of that beauty is literally being devoured by the ocean. And we are not talking about a distant future millions of years from now. We are talking about right now. About cities that have already lost entire streets to the sea. About houses that were built 150 feet from the beach and today have their foundations underwater. This process has a technical name, coastal erosion. But calling it erosion feels too small for what is really happening. Look at the case of Atafona, in the northern part of the state of Rio de Janeiro. This town was once a lively seaside resort, full of streets, homes, businesses, and memories. Today, more than 500 houses have been swallowed by the sea. The ruins still appear on days of low tide, like concrete ghosts rising from the waves. Residents who lived there their whole lives watch their homes disappear, not on a single dramatic storm day, but over years, silently, brick by brick. What was solid ground became the bottom of the ocean. But why is this happening? To understand it, we need to look at forces much larger than any wave. The Earth is not static. The floor of the Atlantic Ocean is expanding, pushed by hot material rising from the Earth's mantle through a structure called the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. This ridge is essentially a seam on the ocean floor, from which new oceanic crust is constantly being born. This pushes the tectonic plates sideways. The South American plate is being slowly pressed while the African plate moves away in the opposite direction. It is the same mechanism that separated South America from Africa about 180 million years ago, forming the Atlantic Ocean itself. And this process has not stopped. It continues active today, right now, while you are watching this video. That alone would be enough to shift coastlines over millennia. But there is a modern accelerator that is making all of this more urgent and more dangerous: the warming of the oceans. As global temperatures rise, the seas expand. Warm water takes up more volume than cold water in a process called thermal expansion. On top of that, glaciers are melting, in Greenland, in the Arctic, in Antarctica. All of that extra water ends up in the oceans. Sea levels are rising at a speed not seen in at least 3,000 years. And Brazil, with its flat coastline in many regions, is particularly vulnerable. There is a map that very few Brazilians know about. It was produced by researchers at UFRJ in partnership with international institutions. On that map, coastal areas of states like Rio de Janeiro, Bahia, Maranhão, Pará, and Rio Grande do Norte are marked as high risk for permanent flooding by the end of this century, depending on the greenhouse gas emission scenarios the world chooses to follow. We are not talking about an occasional high tide. We are talking about regions that could be permanently absorbed by the ocean within the lifetime of children who have already been born. Cities, infrastructure, historical heritage, entire communities. But let us come back down to ground level, because the problem is not just the sea rising, it is also the ground giving way. Many Brazilian coastal regions were built on unstable sediments, on filled-in mangroves, on dunes that were artificially stabilized. When sea levels rise and waves hit with greater force, that ground loses cohesion. It is like wetting a sand wall. It does not collapse all at once. It keeps giving way until one day you look and it is simply no longer there. And there is another factor that most people completely ignore: the destruction of coral reefs. Brazil is home to the largest coral reef complex in the South Atlantic. These reefs function as natural protective walls. They absorb wave energy before it reaches the coast at full force. When the reefs die, whether from rising water temperatures or from ocean acidification caused by excess CO2, waves reach the coast with far greater violence. It is like removing the bumper from a car before a collision. And Brazilian reefs are experiencing bleaching events with increasing intensity and frequency. You might be wondering, but what about the government, the engineers, the solutions? Projects do exist. There are seawalls, groins, and artificial sand replenishment programs. On some famous beaches in Rio de Janeiro, trucks periodically dump tons of sand just to keep the beach visible. It is a constant battle between human beings and the ocean. And the ocean, on the scale of geological time, always wins. Not because engineers are incompetent, but because the forces at play are incomprehensibly larger than any human construction. There is something deeply unsettling about realizing that the map of Brazil could look different in 100 years. That cities with history, with identity, with people could be underwater. Not as a sudden catastrophe, but as a slow, inexorable process that happens while everyday life continues, while people work, celebrate, sleep. The sea advances at night, during the day, in storms and in calm weather, centimeter by centimeter, year after year. And what does this have to do with the history of the Earth? Everything. Because Brazil has been on the ocean floor before. Parts of the territory that today are savanna and cerrado were deep ocean hundreds of millions of years ago. What we are seeing today is not an anomaly. It is the Earth continuing its story, being rewritten in real time, only now with the accidental help of a species that never wanted to destroy anything, but ended up accelerating a process that would have taken tens of thousands of years to happen naturally. And even if none of us will be alive to see the final chapter of this story, we are living in a moment where our choices define the pace of this transformation. Brazil can lose less or lose more. That depends on what happens in the coming decades. And it starts with understanding what is happening, which is exactly what you just did. If this video opened your mind to something you did not know, share it right now with someone who needs to see this. And subscribe to the channel, because in the next video, we are going to reveal which regions of Brazil will actually gain territory from the geological changes that are coming. And the answer will surprise you far more than everything you just watched. Do not miss it.